Okay. In the previous video, we created this frame. Now, what we'll try to do is, let's say we want to add a button to this frame, a button which you can press. So, similar to JFrame, we have a class called JButton. So, for everything that you want to add a button, then there can be a label. A label is a simple text that you want to show up on the frame, or let's say a text field. Text field is a component where you can type in something. So for everything you have their classes and you can add it to the frame. So therefore, you see all of these are components, a frame, a button, a text field, but this frame is sort of a special component in which you can add other components. In frame, you can keep a button. In frame, you can keep a text field. But inside a button, you cannot keep a text field. Or inside a button, you cannot keep a frame. So a frame here, it's also called a container because it can contain other components. So anyways, I'm going to go forward and create a button. So let's say J button B equals to new J button, and you can write some text here which you want to be there on the button, which says, let's say, press me. And let's see what happens now. So it's always good to compile your code after making a little bit of changes to it to see if there is any problem. So again, we see a problem here. It says I cannot find the symbol J button. It's exactly the same problem that we saw with the JFrame, right? The point is you had to import JFrame. So similarly, you need to import JButton also. That's also defined in Java x.swing. You can check that in the documentation, but I'm going to directly add that here, JButton. So you import it, and yes, it works. And when you run this code, you do not see a button over here, right? So the point is button is created, but it's not yet added onto this frame. So you want to add a button to this frame, you should write the command here saying f dot add b. So you should add this button b to your frame f. And so if you see, you can press it, but what's going wrong is you see this entire screen itself becomes the button. The size of the button is huge here. We do not want this bigger button. We want a small button. So let's see how we can do this. So we have functions for everything. So for setting the size of a button, so for setting the size of a frame, you had set size, but for setting the size of a button, we have a function called set bounds. So in this function set bounds, not only can you specify the height and width of the button, but the exact location of your button on the screen. So if I say exact location, so if I say 10, it means 10 pixels from the top. And then if you say another 10, it means 10 pixels from this margin. So leave a space of 10 here. So yeah, something like this. So you can just change these values to see what they are doing. So if it is your frame and you say 10, 10, it means 10 from here and 10 from here. And this is the place where your button should appear. And then the next two parameters, they are going to be for the height and the width of the button. So let me say 50 height and 50 width and see what happens now. Nothing really changes, it remains the same. So that is because by default there is some layout which is enforced on this frame. So what I'm going to do is I don't want any pre-specified layout. So I'm going to set the layout of this frame as null. So when you set the layout of the frame as null, you are totally free to define the bounds of any component that you want to have here. So for now, we are going to keep the layout null for all our codes. With the time, we'll explore other layouts. Yeah, so you see what happened here? So this 10 space was probably very less, and this is the button here. It is so small that the text is unable to come over here. So we need to increase the width of this button. Let me see if I increase this to 150 and I increase this to 50 and 50. what happens. So you should just play around with these numbers to realize what is happening over here. So you see, when you did 50 comma 50, this space increased, this space increased, and instead of width, the height of the button increased. So this means that this one is for height, this one is for width. So I'm going to set it to 150 and this one back to 50. Yeah, now it looks good. So now if you click on this button, so the problem basically is nothing is happening because you haven't told Java what to do when you press the button. But the point is you can keep on clicking on this button, right? You can keep on pressing on it and you can see that its color changes when you press it. So that's a button. There are some more things that you can add. So let me quickly show you two more things just like button. So one is a label and one is a text field. So these are the ones which are the most frequently used. So again, you can create a J label, L equals to new J label, which says, let's say hi there. And if you set it bounds, so if you keep its bounds exactly as the bounds of the J button, they are going to overlap with each other. So I'm going to change it. So let's make this one over here 150, just so that both of these appear at different locations. And then this should be L dot set bounds. And similar to your button, you should add it to the frame. So frame dot add this particular label over here. And let's see what happens. Again, the same error says I cannot find the symbol J label. So you need to import J label also. Now you see our import statements are just increasing like anything. So for every component, we have to import it. So what you can do is, instead of importing it in three different lines here, you can just indicate a star here, meaning that import every class from Java x.swing. So you don't have to import all these components separately. And so when you run this, you see this press me and you see this hi there. So this is a label. You cannot press on it. So these are two things. Let's also add to try a text field. So you'll see a lot of things here. Text field, text area. So I want to add text field. Let's say T equals to new J text field. If you want to have something by default in the text field, you can keep that. Otherwise, you can just remove this and you will have a text field. And let me just slide it slightly down, keep it at 250 so that you can see all of these. And you should add it, f dot add T. What happened? So we say press me, we see hi there, but somehow the text field doesn't come. Let's check if we have made any mistake here. So you see when we set the bounds here, it's not for L, it is for T. So while copy pasting the code, you have to be careful. You run this. So you see all these three components. There's a button, there is a label, there is a text field, and you can type whatever you want in this text field. So we have added three components to our frames. Next video is going to be particularly interesting, probably also the last concept for our today's lab, and the most, you can say, tricky one also, where we are going to learn how to make something happen when you press this button. When you actually press this button, something should happen, and how do you define that?